course.
Oh, you did? Hello, everybody. Once again, Tom Matuska here with the Matuska Taxidermy Supply Company, live on Thursday afternoon from sunny Spirit Lake, Iowa. And we're going to continue on with the Walleye project today. And those of you that joined us, are we on like maybe number 3?
Yes,
Three.
number
That's a
3.
good guess, because these continuing projects go on for lots of numbers. You can look back last week, and we showed you how to make a pattern, how to carve a body, and these are all in order. They can find them on our YouTube, or they can find them in our archives of our Matuska Taxidermy Supply Company. So it's pretty helpful for people that are, unfamiliar or haven't done a project or are just doing it for the first time of the season, whether it's mounting a deer head or mounting a fish or carving a body or buying a body. Look back in the archives, and I think you will find a lot of good information on how to proceed and the methods that we do. Now, that being said, there are, like the old proverbial saying, 100 ways to skin a cat. There are also 100 ways to mount a bird, skin a bird, do a fish, mount a deer head. Everybody will develop their own techniques and have their own protocol as far as what to do first and how to do it. So just because you see what we do here in a certain order, a certain fashion, or a certain product, don't feel that that's the only way to do it. Make sure to, carve your own niche and use your own supplies and develop your own technique on how to do this. There's not a right or a wrong. It's just a right or a wrong how it looks when you get finished. So we'll try to steer you along the way and show you methods that work good for us, but just we want you to know that it's not the only way to do things. Okay, we started with a walleye. We have a couple different walleyes going here, but just so you don't have to wait in between. But we started with a walleye the other day, and we showed you how to make a pattern and how to buy a commercial body. This is a commercial body. This is a Fish on Fish Forums by Tim Perkins and Brett Wingfield. And if this body that you buy fits that skin, and the pose is a pose that the customer wanted, there's nothing easier and faster than mounting on a commercial body. Those of you that are old enough and used to go to the NTAs, I'm going to say in the 80s, Archie Phillips always had a stand, and he would stand up, and he was a little bit like a carnival barker, where he would have a microphone, and he would, almost like the people that sell knives that slice and dice and cut a tin can and then they can slice a tomato. And he would wait until he had a crowd of people, and he would say, who wants to watch me mount this largemouth bass in 6 minutes? And of course, nobody thinks anybody can do that in 6 minutes. He would get somebody with a second hand in their watch, and he would say, tell me when to start. And he would take a largemouth skin, which had already been mounted 3 or 4 or 5 times that day, and he would take one of his Jiffy Quick fish bodies, and he could literally have that fish in a drying position in 6 minutes. It was fascinating, and Archie was a fascinating person and a marketer all rolled into one. But that's how easy these can be, and we don't do them in 6 minutes, but they are very fast if you choose to get a bought and body. And don't forget, you can make these smaller. You can enlarge them. You can pour more foam onto them. You can, excuse me, you can shorten them up. These are workable because one size does not fit all. So that's the bought and bodies. And then I think last week we showed you how to make a pattern. And we take kind of real extensive measurements. We take a height, a width, and a circumference in certain strategic places along the fish's body. And it doesn't matter to me where you measure that fish, but when you're carving the body, you need to know why you took it there. This one it is cleather bone. If I move that measurement ½ inch this way or ½ inch this way, it's going to give you a different species of fish. So you want to know where you took those measurements. It doesn't have to be exactly where we showed you. But this is how we make a pattern of that fish, and we keep these. Once we carve the body and mount the fish, we save these over and over and over and over. Every once in a great while, a customer may come in and he said, geez, my fish looks a little, you know, skinnier than what I got or a little shorter than what I got. You can pull out his pattern and you can show him exactly what that fish was, you know, when he brought it in. So we save these just to, you know, protect ourselves also. So that's the pattern that we like to use. From that, we showed you the urethane foam, fish carving foam, we refer to it. It's actually an insulation foam. It's 1.5 pound density. I can take my finger, I'm not going to do it, but I can take my finger and punch it right into here. It's really soft foam and very easy to carve. You can carve it with any sharp knife. We like to use a fillet knife because it's flexible and you can put a lot of detail into them. We also use products.
Bluefish foam.
The bluefish foam is, we call it dustless fish foam, and I think if you Googled it, it's called billet, or it's called flotation foam. And flotation foam they use on docks to hold up floating docks. But it's a blue open cell foam, and it's much harder. You don't have to worry about breaking it. It's more durable, and it gives you a nice firm fish body, but you don't have the dust. Like with soft fish foam, I have dust all over. I have to be careful of the dust so I don't get it in my eyes. I told you last week, if you have trouble and don't like this clings to everything, spray yourself with Static Guard, and little Static Guard on your clothes and in your hands and on your face, and you can walk away with no foam particles on you. It works real good. And the only thing is, this color of the fish foam is a very nice color to mount on. It's a light creamy yellow, off-white, and it doesn't show through. Even though that fish skin is very thick, the color of the foam will show through. This is not made for the taxidermy industry. It's made for the insulation industry, and we have gone through pink, and we've gone through gray, and we've gone through this color. Comes in different colors, kind of whatever Dow Corning seems to want to make for that 5-year period or whatever. Comes in different colors. If it's not this color, you're going to want to paint it. Our pink fish foam actually showed through a thick walleye skin, especially down in the thin areas. So we would always have to take our pink foam and we would paint it with latex white paint. The blue flotation foam, the dustless foam, you will want to paint that with a white latex paint and let it dry real good, and then mount the fish, and it'll give you a really nice sharp contrast on your fish skin as it comes through.
Butch is saying, Tom, you're doing a solo.
Yeah.
And you are solo this week because Brett is at the Texas show judging, along with Corey Crothers. So if you're at the Texas show, make sure to say hi to those guys.
And that's a big one. I think they have 500 people in attendance. Jerry Huffaker said, I think.
Yep.
That's a huge show, and if you ever get the opportunity to go to the Texas show, it's one worth attending. You know, it's a big, high-class show. That's the only place I've ever been that they had a bar with live bull riding in the bar. Right as,
Did you
right
do it?
there. No, I wanted to. No.
That's on your bucket list.
Not anymore. My bucket list has turned into a glass. No more buckets for me. Okay, so anyway, this is the walleye that we did last week. And we sanded it. Once once we get a shape that we think is pretty close, we start, we'll usually set this aside, pin the pattern to it, pin the person's instructions to it, then we skin the fish. Whenever we're instructing students on body carving, it's very nice to have this fish laying here because you can do things like this. You can measure that fish and you can transfer it to your body and you can tell how much you have to go down or go up. You can do the width, and I can see that my width is really nice. My height was a little high. I can stick a tape measure on here, get my circumference. So that's real easy if you haven't skinned the fish. Plus, different fish have different shapes in different areas. A walleye, for instance, is very rounded in the belly and more tapered at the top, almost like a pear. So as you're skinning, you can observe that and you can transfer that shape onto your styrofoam body. Another thing to be aware of is hydropressure is the pressure that water exerts on a fish's body. And when a fish is laying here flat, he is not the same shape as he is in the water. When they're suspended in the water, they take on a little bit different shape. So be aware of that so you don't make your fish too flat because they were laying on the table. Okay, so this is the one from last week. We're going to set that aside over here. And we're going to show you some. I'm going to attempt to rough skin this. I don't know how far I'll get. I'll get as far as I can. Then I want to show you what a really nicely skinned fish looks like. So on this person's directions, he wants an S-curve. So this is our S-curves. And an S-curve can mean head in to the wall, tail flipped out. Or it can mean head out, tail curved in. They look like this. You can make them more extreme. You can make them less extreme. The more curve you put into a fish, you better start taking a top profile sketch also, because the more curve the body gets, it also shortens in length a little bit. So that's an S curve. That's what this guy wants. And I'm going to say moderate mouth and gills, angle the fish slight down, so when we put him on whatever we put him, usually we'll put the head out. We'll angle him down a little bit. And any of our fish that we do, they're adjustable. You can angle them up if you get tired of them. You know, after a while, you can do them different angles. They're all adjustable on the mounting, whether it's driftwood or whatever it is. Okay, they gave us a picture, and the picture is head to the left. So they want this fish. This is going to be a show side. That means I'm going to cut him on this side. And double check, always double check and double check, so you don't cut a person's fish on the wrong side. You don't want to cut him down there and have to sew him up and fix it.
Have you ever done that?
We have made mistakes from time to time, absolutely.
You have to go fishing for a new walleye.
I would fish a long time for a walleye like this. Okay, when I start cutting, I'm going to make two basic cuts. The first one is going to be under the gill filaments, under these gill rakers, way up to what we call his throat latch right here. So I'm going to cut that soft skin right here all the way around, and I call it a C cut when I'm instructing people on how to do it, because I'm just going to make a big C all the way up to the top. My next cut is going to be through the cleathrum bone. The cleathrum bone is this really hard collarbone, and I'm going to cut through the cleathrum bone, and I'm going to try to cut shallow so I don't cut into his intestines, all the way through the center of the fish, all the way to his tail raise, straight down the fish. Now there's a whole lot of different ways you can cut a fish, and we won't get into those now. This is for a basic commercial mount. We're going to cut him on the back side. That's going to be our work area. I tell customers that I finish the fish 3/4 of the way around. He's going to be painted a ways on the back, both on the belly and on the top. We're not going to tip scales way back there. We're going to put our effort into the show side of the fish. There is a work area where we sew him up and where we fix the seam. That's going to be on the back. Now, there will be reasons that maybe somebody wants one in a glass case and you don't want any seams to show. You can, depending on the pose, you can cut them down the belly, you can cut them down the back, all different kinds of cuts, and you can research those and try different ones. But for today, it's going to be dead center down the back of the fish. Okay, to start with, I want a wet surface. This is really important because this fish is wet to start with, and as you put him on the table, there's a little bit of stick to the fiberglass or to the Formica table, and I want him to be able to slide without sticking. So I just have a water bottle. I've got X-Effect in the water bottle. That's our bactericide that we use in the shop. And I'm just gonna, I want to always keep my table wet. And X-Effect is just a good bactericide. It makes things smell better. It's a hospital disinfectant, and just keeps things a little bit cleaner. So now my fish can slide around. Certain fish you're going to want to take precautions with losing scales. I think if you go back in the YouTube videos in our archives, we showed you how to skin a crappie. Crappie is very fragile. Most often we do not need to do anything special when we skin a crappie for losing scales. But if you're a little bit inexperienced or don't do this every day like we do, there's things like denatured alcohol, painting with Elmer's glue. There's different methods to keep the scales nice and tight. With a walleye, that's not necessary. You're not going to, most often, if you start losing scales on a walleye, you're doing something seriously wrong. So we're not going to do anything special. My first cut is going to be the C cut. I like my Wesnip scissors just because it's easier for me to squeeze down and not have to open them up all the time. And I'm going to lift up his gill flap. I'm going to stick the tip of the scissors right under the skin, being careful not to poke through the show side or the other side. And I'm going to go all the way around, all the way up into here. So right now all I've done is make a little cut all the way up under the gill. Now if you want to, they get kind of messy. I'm going to put a little borax in there to absorb some of the blood. Okay, now you haven't done anything terribly wrong now, so it's not a bad idea to double check the direction that you were going to do, because it's not too late to change your mind. So I'm just going to make sure, head to the left, I'm cutting him on the right side, I'm good. So now I'm going to cut through that cleather bone. Again, don't go too deep, because that's his stomach and all kinds of vital organs. Okay, and once you cut that cleather bone, I'm just going to take the tip of the scissors and I'm going to go right down the side of the fish all the way to the tail race. Now you can use a knife if you want to. A knife will oftentimes slide the scales, slip them off and slide them out of the way, which I don't want to lose them. I'd rather have scales cut. Now I'm trying to stay shallow, and so far I have not gone into his intestines and stomach and internal organs. Now, as you're working with the fish, it's real important to keep these fins soggied up all the time. Just keep them wet. When the fins dry out, they start cracking, start splitting, and they get, big splits in them. Look at how pretty that tail is. That tail, he's got one split over here, but that tail is really pretty. Notice the edges of these fins. They're not scissors smooth, but they're pretty smooth. And they're not all ratty like you'll see a lot of people think they're making a real natural looking fish. It's not natural at all. Fish have much smoother fins than people think. Okay, there's a lot of different fish skinning knives on the market. This used to be called the Deem fish skinning knife. And do we still call it that?
I think so.
Deem, D-E-I-H-M, I think. And it's kind of like I don't know, I always thought it was like a grapefruit knife. It's kind of serrated. You're not going to cut the fish. Usually you won't cut through the fish. It's a little bit on the forgiving side. You can use a scalpel. You can use a sharp knife, anything you want, but I can go pretty fast with this. Another thing, I can't skin a fish without borax. I have to dip my fingers in borax just like this, and that helps me hang on to the fish so he's not slimy and I can get a grip of him. I can't skin a fish without borax. Now, sometimes you're going to have a customer who says, I want to keep the fish meat, make sure you save the fish meat for him. Borax and fish meat's probably going to taste like Tide and cod. It's not going to taste very good. So if I want to save the meat, I would use something like cornstarch.
Would it still be good?
It's not. Most of the time, what I think is when this guy caught this fish, he ran over to his buddy and he said, look what I caught. Then he threw it in his trunk and he went to the bait shop and he said, look what I caught. Can you take my picture? And then they did that a few times. And then they came back. Oh, better go show Grandpa. Goes to show Grandpa. And pretty soon that fish needs a little soap to taste better. So we try not to save a lot of fish meat, but occasionally you will. Now, think of a roof, how shingles lay on a roof. That's how these scales are overlapped onto here. And by going the wrong direction on certain fish, you can actually flip scales up. On a walleye, I'm not worried about it. Walleye and bass, you can go any direction and you're not going to hurt the fish. Some thin-skinned fish like a crappie, white bass, you're actually going to flip scales off going against those scale roots. So I got to get started somewhere, so I'm going to just kind of a sawing motion, and I got started there. And another thing you can do, you can actually sharpen these up a little bit if you want to on a steel. I'm using a ceramic steel, real inexpensive, and they sharpen a knife up pretty fast.
Don't drop them, they're very fast.
Don't drop them, they'll break, is right. Now, if you're careful and with a little experience, you'll be able to skin this fish so clean that I'm leaving the silver lining on the meat itself. And that's gonna save you a lot of wear and tear on the skin, because you can see how white the skin is coming out because I'm skinning it close. And I'm not being careful, I'm being pretty rough and aggressive here. But I'm not gonna have to scrape that very much. And when you don't have to scrape a fish skin, you're not gonna risk losing scales. Now I'm trying to go very flat to the skin. A little borax for grip. See all that nice silver lining that's staying with the carcass? Now, as you skin, there's all kinds of obstacles you're going to encounter. The first one I'll come to are his fins. I'll go around the backside and I'll hit his dorsal, the fin bases, And because they extend into the skeleton, here's his anal fin. I can't saw through with this knife. I'm going to have to cut it with the scissors, but you can hear it. Can't go any farther through those fins. Down here I should be able to. Okay, and then I'm just going to slide him around. Now I always make sure that I keep that table wet. Some fish, that's not a problem. You get a big old slimy northern and he's slipping all over the place. Some fish dry out pretty fast. And while I'm working here, just text in any of your questions that I can answer for you.
What's your giveaway today for liking and sharing? Because I feel like that knife would be a good giveaway.
Is it a?
It is that knife, right?
Is it?
Or was it?
It's a fish
Yeah, it
skinning
was. It
knife.
was.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Yep.
It works pretty darn good.
And they were good. I don't know what I'd do without them. And for a while, they were discontinued, and we got kind of panicky. They don't wear out. I've got knives that I've had around for 20 years. Now up in here, I can just go blindly. I'm just watching the skin so that I'm not poking through, and I can kind of just saw way up into the head.
How many fish have you skinned in your life? That well.
A lot.
Is that for supper or for taxidermy?
More for taxidermy. Okay, now I am to my tail raise. I'm to my anal fin, dorsal fin. So now I'm going to snip all of those loose, and I'm going to. This is real important. I'm going to feel the show side of that fish. I can feel it. If I poke these scissors out, I can tell steel from a lump through the skin. So I got my fingers back there, and I'm going to snip one fin ray at a time. Don't try to do them all, and I'm going to try to get as close to the skin and to the fin itself without leaving a whole big muscle on there. Now he has another little obstruction there, and that's his anus, and I'm going to snip through that too because that'll hold me up from the skinning process. Okay, here's what that looks like when I cut those fin rays. Since I'm down at this end, I'm going to go a little farther on my tail, and I'm going to snip the tail loose. Same way. Hold your fingers on the underneath side and snip one ray at a time. Don't get carried away and think, oh, I'm going to take a great big snip, because you could cut the tail off. One ray at a time.
Or a finger.
Or a finger. And you want to get as much meat out as you can. I see a lot of people cut their fish body in half, and they take this out separate. I like the leverage that the whole body gives me when I do this, getting it out, so I like to leave it all attached.
If you were doing a carp, would you need to use a reproduction head?
We have done both, and the carp's head is loaded with oily cartilage. So you're either going to have to rebuild it extensively, and that's going to be a fix. You know, it's going to give you a nice looking carp for a few years, and then pretty soon oils are going to start leaking out. I would reproduce the head, especially if it was a larger carp. We do, you know, the trend is, of course, reproductions now, especially with catch and release. We still do lots and lots and lots of skin mounts, especially on largemouth, smallmouth, panfish, and walleyes. But we've done a lot of skin mounts. We've done barracuda, we've done parrotfish, we've done all kinds of saltwater species that are still in showrooms today. Now, my fingers are following along with that scissors tip. If you were to poke through the skin and not catch it and keep snipping, I've seen people, you know, put 6 to 8 inch cuts all through their fish skin. So constantly check. Fish are, for us, very easy to repair. If we do a good job of skinning, we'll always have a hole here and a hole there that we have to fix. Okay, now we're going to come down the show side. Same as we did on the back, except this is the part you really want to look good. And I'm keeping this fish skin as straight as I can, like I'm cutting flat to it. Don't let it get wrinkly and in folds and things like that. That'll cause you to cut through the side. Now you notice for this skin mount, start to finish, A to Z, we picked an easy fish like a walleye. Nothing changes whether we're doing a 30-pound muskie or a walleye, except the time that you have to sit and watch me do this. If we're skinning a big muskie or northern pike, this process may take 4 hours or more. Okay, now I'm getting stuck up in the head. I can't go much farther. So it's time to get that neck and head union separated. Let's see. Got garbage? Thank you. Okay, now I take my scissors and I go up into the head and I try to snip as much meat and cartilage loose that I can get. Now, depending on the size of the fish, I want to separate that spinal cord. The spinal cord runs, I can feel it right here under his gill, runs all the way from the tail, his spinal column, all the way up into the head. Now, many of you can just take that and snip it, and I used to be able to also, but now I don't have quite the grip that I had. So now...
Getting old?
Huh?
Getting old?
Getting old.
Still not writing you off.
Okay, I'm going to take a chisel. I used to do this on all the big muskies and northerns. I got the chisel on that spinal column, and I'm just going to break it. Maybe I won't. Okay, and that loosened that up. Now I'm going to flip him here. Oops. Okay, now the body comes out like so. And I also have his throat. I'm going to cut through his throat. There's different ways of handling the esophagus and the roof of the mouth and the floor of the mouth. And we'll show you a couple options. Now the belly muscle is very thin, and you're going to want to be careful so you don't, if you cut into it, it'll be a big mess. I'm going to try not to.
Todd Buchanan liked your chisel trick. He said that's a good one.
When you get some of the big fish that we do, it's impossible for me to cut the spine. I can do it. And there's different big wire cutters and tin snips you can use, but I tend to pick up one tool, and it's that Wesnip scissors, and the chisel helps me use just that. Now you can open this up. This is the, and I'm kind of making a mess. Oh, he's got feathers. Kind of making a mess here.
Baby duck.
But he's got his pectoral fins and his pelvic fins all join up here in one cartilage girdle. And by breaking this open, I can snip them independently from one another. The first one is going to be the kind of the cleathern bone on this side. Okay, now what I did was I separated this pectoral fin from the rest of it. Now I can skin a little farther. And then up here I'm going to have the two pelvic fins. I can maybe get those in one shot here. Okay, and that skin just peels right off of that brisket. Then I've got a pelvic fin here. I'm going to cut that. And this is nothing more than repetitive, doing it over and over and over in practice, figuring out where things are. Okay, I got one. Right pelvic fin is loose. Almost. Oh, I'm doing good on time.
And good.
Okay, then I come over to the next pelvic fin.
So sad.
What's that?
So sad.
So sad?
Would have been good eating.
Okay, and let me rinse him off. If you're going to do fish, you want to have a nice big sink, something that you can lay the whole fish in and wash him off real good.
And for those just tuning in, Brett is at the Texas show, so that's why he's not here with us today. So if you're at the Texas show, make sure to go say hi to him and Corey. Corey's judging birds and Brett's judging fish. And if you're a member of the Texas show, you should be getting an email from us to get some perks for being a member of their association. So watch for that. That cleans up pretty good with that.
Well, it's a little waste of borax, and we buy borax in, I think, like 20-pound boxes, and it's a powdered borax. It's exceptional for fish like that.
And one of the things Tara mentioned, because she went through it, is don't inhale it, because she ended up in the hospital for quite some time for inhaling the borax, getting it in her lungs. And make sure to be careful with that. And remember to like and share our videos for your chance to win. We do a giveaway every week of one of the products that the guys use. That's a nice little wash tub.
That wash tub came from Jerry Schaefer, and Jerry Schaefer is the inventor of the new angle bird flushers. And Jerry Schaefer had a taxidermy business, a very good taxidermy business, when most of us were little. And a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant inventor. But he made the fiberglass wash tubs, and he had whalers and different kind of names for them. And that thing's 40-some years old, and he quit making them. But it was a good product. Okay, this is what you're going to have. And I did not do, I started out trying to impress you, doing a really nice skin job, but it's meatier than I had hoped for. Now, because I didn't put any stress on the skin, now I do have to scrape it, but I'm going to have to scrape it as careful as I can to not torque that skin and lose scales. A few things you're going to want to pay attention to. One is a wet table so your skin can slide on it. Also, as I'm skinning a fish, I always try to clean up any of my blood and juices, because, especially on a walleye, you see how that skin is already tainted? The the blood has got up underneath those scales, and I try to keep that to a minimum. It's got up underneath the scales, and it's turned it to a pink cast, which is gonna, I think I can soak it out. My fish pickle, my fish bath will take it out. But you don't want to work that blood up underneath the scales. And then just keep your fish as clean as you can. Then a lot of people have all kinds of recipes on how to scrape a fish. Yes, Amanda?
Bill's wondering, before skinning a northern or muskie, would you try to deslime it first?
There are all kinds of deslimers on the market and different recipes for getting the slime off of any fish. I have never found anything that works better than a garden sprayer on a hose. Just the kind, they're cheap, you know, $2.99, $3.99 at Home Depot. With as much pressure as you can, and spray with the scales, and it does an exceptional job of getting slime off. You can use any of the soaks that you want to also. A lot of people use detergents like Tide or borax or salt, different things, but nothing works better than the spray nozzle. Okay, I have as sharp a knife as I could get. It's not very sharp. I needed to spend more time on it. You'll notice that all the little connecting riblets, I'll call them, lay at certain angles. And I'm going to try to follow that direction, and I hold my knife straight up and down. Really important to hold your knife straight up and down. If you're going to tilt it, drag the blade. Don't point the blade ahead of you. And you'll get fast at this. You can scrape it pretty clean pretty fast.
Todd's saying that Matuska should come up with a tub like that. That's a great idea, Todd. I'll talk to him afterwards.
I do so much fiberglassing every day that tubs is not going to be, I probably should. Tubs isn't going to be the next thing.
You can do it.
So we have a question on Facebook from, I'm sorry, on YouTube from David Lane, and David is wondering, what is the surface of your bench made with that looks easy to clean?
Cheap leftover Formica from, like Menards or something like that. It works really good. Some people use stainless steel countertops, things like that. But see how clean that is? I'm getting it pretty clean. Now be careful. I started getting a little chunk of skin there was going deeper, so I backed off of that spot. Certain fish like muskies and northerns, you're going to, along the lateral line, I think is where it is, you're going to have a real gristly, it just doesn't want to scrape. It's too tough for the knife. So for those areas, I'll take the knife and I'll actually shave with it, and I will turn the knife at an angle and actually cut. Another thing we've done on muskies and northerns, I know I hear a lot of people using, Tim Perkins uses a fleshing machine, an actual, you know, leather fleshing machine,
That sounds scary.
like the American Eagle or something like that, and they will flesh their fish skin. When Brett and I did the northern for the world competition, we actually carefully played with the fleshing machine. Another thing that works real well is the scythe knife. The scythe knife can take off some of that stuck-on gristle real well. You have to keep picking it out of the blade is the drawback, but it really shaves well with the new blade.
Clifford Knudsen is asking about if we're going to the National Show. We are going to National Show. That's going to be a really big show this year, and it is July 22nd, the weekend after July 22nd. And we will be there. We will have some booths set up. It's kind of, you know, the World Show got canceled, so that's kind of our big bang one that we're doing. We will have a discount for those that are going. We call it our backyard. It's only a couple hours away from us, so those passing through, make sure to stop and say hi. But it's in Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Dale Manning does a really nice job with the National Show. I think he took it over last year, maybe his first show, but they went above and beyond to make it really a nice presentation. Nice setup.
So if you want pre-orders, we are bringing pre-orders until the trailer is full and we can no longer get them. And then we also, the week after that is the Missouri show. And we are staying loaded and we are going to the Missouri show as well. So pre-orders for that you guys can do too for those going to the Missouri show.
Now always keep a sharp knife. And on the body of the fish, on the show side of the fish, which is this big triangle right here, I always want to scrape perpendicular to the fish. I don't want to go this direction, or don't want to go that direction because I can slip scales right off.
And you won't know that you're doing it.
No, you won't know till you flip it up and you go, oh my gosh, where'd these scales come from? On the back of the fish, I'm not too concerned about the back of the fish. We're in this to, minimize our time spent, and I will go this direction on the back of the fish. Now, when you get to your fin bases, spend particularly careful attention to them. I'm going to scrape all of this muscle and meat and his fin base loose, but it's still hung up on the knuckle bones. So again, I'm going to hold my fingers on the show side of the fish, and one at a time. Don't try to take them all at once. And I will feel, if I feel that scissors tip come through, you'll feel the temperature of the steel is colder. It'll feel different to you. And see how clean I can get that? Now, anytime you're going to have problems with a skin mount fish, it's probably going to be along the fin bases is where you could end up with grease leakage or insects burrowing in or that sort of thing. We have a whole lot of scrapers that are available for skinning your fish too, and you might find a lot of those different ones handy for this process, or for the scraping the meat away from the bone.
I use my scraper for my peppers at home.
I have always wanted to do that, and I never have.
I was doing it the other day, and a friend was over, and she's like, oh my gosh, where'd you get that? I need to get it for Tom. I'm like, I'll get you one. That's a 701. It works great for jalapenos and red peppers.
You guys see my peppers. I got great peppers coming for your husband.
It's exciting.
And your husband's in Washington, D.C.?
D.C. Talking about soybeans.
I saw a great picture of him in front of the Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
Is he with Cotton Graves or is he with the Soybean Council?
He's with the Soybean Council.
Okay, and all of this black membrane, you want to get off because that's going to be potential unwanted material inside your fish skin. Okay, and you get the idea, I think, of the body skinning. That's the easiest part. And the fins, I showed you the fins. It's just a matter of getting those as clean as you possibly can. This tail we want really, really clean. Somebody showed me one time, double over that tail and look where the scales are. I have about a 1/4 inch farther that I need to go. So I'm going to want to dig in here, and I'm going to take my knife and cut on the top lobe here, cut on the bottom lobe. You noticed last week we made a funny little shape to our fish body when we carved it, and it looked a little bit like this. And you think, how is that ever going to fit in there? It won't fit in there unless you get out all of these bones. You have to slice those all the way to the skin. And this is especially important in fish like a trout. And once I butterfly that open, and any of you taxidermists know what that's all about because you do lips and noses all the time. Now I've butterflied that open, and now I can slice out that. And by doing that, you're going to be able to come up with a cavity that'll accept this. So that'll give you an idea of what you need to do with the fins, fin bases, clean them all up. And when somebody instructed me on how to skin fish, they said you're going to get to a point where you don't know what to do. Like, how do I know when I'm done? How do I know where to go? Do I have to get all that stuff? Take it over to the sink, spray it off. We use those high pressure garden hoses. When I say high pressure, it's nothing fancy. It's the cheapest sprayer that you would water your plants with from any hardware store. And spray this. You can spray it hard with good cold water. Flip him over and spray. Don't spray against the scales, spray with the scales, and you'll clean him up really, really good. When you lay him back down here, you go, wow, he looks way better than I thought he did. But it will kind of like turning the light on to show you what you need to get from here on out. Okay, when it comes to you got two complicated areas up here. They're going to be overwhelming for you. One is the brisket area, which holds all of the cartilage in that girdle from that pelvic fins and pectoral fins coming together. And I cut all the fins loose, but now they will actually peel free from the skin, and they will peel all the way up to where they connect. Maybe. I get a little borax on my fingers, and I can peel that skin all the way down to the fin. And here's where I almost always peel till I get a hole. A little bit of epoxy sculpt will fix that, but it tells me that I'm getting far enough. Okay, I've got that muscle all peeled out. I'm going to get this little bone here. I'm going to snip it once, and then I'll come back and snip it better the second time. Okay, that's one pectoral fin. Now I can flesh all this off. I can come in here and cut that out, clean up that. I've got these pelvic fins come up here in a little point way up in his throat latch. And this is the kind of thing, it's hard to show you on camera, but as you dig into these and struggle and pull them loose, you'll get the hang of it. And I just peel all of that skin will peel right down that throat latch. And I try to keep them, on little fish it's hard, but on bigger fish it's easier to keep that all intact. So here's his throat latch, and that's cartilage that comes way up to the point of his throat. And I'm going to cut that loose. That's how pointy his throat was. I got another ½ inch to go in there. Now this can all be cleaned off. You can either use this, you can use your knife, you can use the little scrapers. Next week, I think we're going to show you how to deal with this throat. You can take that throat and you can scrape it and clean it as good as you can, sew it up so that when you open the fish's mouth, you'll actually see a representation of a throat. It'll look like a throat. I'm going to show you a better and easier way to clean that up. I'm going to cut this throat right out. Here's the bottom of his mouth. I'm going to snip that loose first. There will be a triangle of skin. Now that's the floor of his mouth. That exposes the roof of his mouth, of his throat. I'm going to cut that loose. Now, the bad thing is, when a customer is carrying his fish home out the door, putting it in his car, he's going to look down the throat and he's going to say, oh my gosh, it's styrofoam in there. Not at Matuska Taxidermy, they don't get styrofoam, they get a throat. And we're going to show you next week how to make a throat so when he looks down there, he can see a minnow tail if he wants to. It's going to be very, very realistic.
With feathers.
With feathers. So I'm going to set this aside. You get the idea. We have to, let me show you one more thing quick. I'm running a little bit long, but we have somewhere, maybe, there we go. You need to get the cheek meat out. And to get the cheek meat out, we need to remove the eye. And I'm going to just, we're going to get censored from Facebook. This is a very good thing to measure also, is to measure this, because you're going to want to put in the same size you took out. Camera people aren't digging this. Okay, now we got to get all that meat out. This is a great tool for it. It's a cheeker, comes in two sizes, a little cheeker and a big cheeker. And it's a serrated knife, just like the grapefruit knife. And look at, I can separate that skin. Turn it different directions to get where you want to. Now all my skin is separated from the meat underneath. Now I'm going to go under the patty of meat, under that cheek meat. And you can actually saw that meat. And by working it a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left, you can get all of that cheek meat out of here. And I'm holding my hand on top of the skin so that I don't tear through. How much time I got? They gonna shut me off? And there's all kinds of little tools. We have those little, I don't know what they're called exactly. Those little hoop tools like are used for sculpting or fleshing. We have several different kinds. Now if you're careful, I'm not being careful, but I can get all this meat out of here in one patty if I were careful. Okay, now I've got a lot of it out. What really helps me is to fill that full of borax, work it around. That borax is going to cling to all that leftover meat. And with my knife up and down, or the little cheek scraper, I can scrape it back and forth and get it out. And you have to get it all. You can't shortcut this process because when you mount the fish, we use clay. There's different cheek meat builder. There's all kinds of different materials out there you can use. But if you have any meat left up in here and you fill it full of clay, the meat actually shrinks and it's going to leave you a big indent. Now it doesn't matter what tool you find useful for this. The little Deem fish skinning knife works good. Your knife works good. But you have to get all of that meat out of there. And we're going to wash that up real clean. Then I take my finger, feel in there, and you want that to feel clean. Once you feel a really nice fleshed out cheek area, you really appreciate it. And it'll be a nicer mount also. Okay, I'm going to clean up for a second, and then I'm going to show you the final product here. Got any last minute questions, make sure you shout them out. We have time for a few more questions.
Okay, we do have a question from Tara, and Tara is wondering, do you cut the jaw open too? She says she saw that on a northern in the past.
On certain fish, I will do that, and a northern or a muskie is one of them. And there is so much meat down in the bottom jaws of northerns and muskies that, yes, you have to get that out. And a tool that we found, it's a little morbid, as some things that we do here can appear, but a spade bit, a small spade bit can really auger out the unwanted tissue in there. Okay, jump over to this fish. Has been fleshed, ready to mount, really, probably ready to pickle. He hasn't been, the skin hasn't been preserved yet. But as you wash them, this is what he should look like. This one still has the throat in it. I would like to take that out. It'll give me a nicer, cleaner, longer lasting mount. Now, a lot of you out there probably use artificial heads. We call them hybrid fish, artificial heads and fins. There's not a thing wrong with that, and it's maybe the wave of the future. A lot of people do some really nice fish, but you know, with artificial heads and fins, but we are using on this one, we're going to use the real head and the real fins, and we're going to show you how to preserve it. But this fish has been skinned, still has a little bit of touch-ups. He's on a scale from 1 to 10, I'd say he's a 9.5. This is the fish that we measured and patterned last week. And so here's the body, and then I'll show you what we're after in a fit. At this point, when this fish is this clean, we take the body, insert it into here, and now here's that tail area. If we skin that tail out like we showed you and fleshed it real good, that skin comes together within probably 1/8 of an inch down here. Make sure that your head is way up in as far as the head. You notice we left this big extension on here. That's going to keep our head from coming off in the direction the fish is going. If you don't have something like that, the fish's head is going to drop down, and when it drops down, he's going to look like, we call them sheephead freshwater drum. They look like a complete different species of fish. If you don't leave that extension on there, we at least like to take a stiff wire and run it along the roof of the mouth into the body so that it does not drop down on you. Okay, this is a test fit on this fish, and I'll usually pin it in place. I like to pin it. I want to get a good idea whether this fish fits or not. And another thing I also did, when that fish, before, and we didn't do this for you, but when that fish is laying there before you skinned him, take your hand and feel the fish, pet him. And you'll notice that you can't feel the pelvic fins. It's because they lay in a little trench to streamline them, hydrodynamic it's called. I put that butt in there, and that fin can lay in that little pocket when he wants to for speed and ease of going through the water. So I carved that in there also. Now, I'm within a 1/4 inch on this fish skin, and that's just pulling it. I'm not sewing or anything. And I usually say I can count on my glue for an 1/8 inch, and I can count on my stitches for an 1/8 inch. Now, from my pattern, I know that that fish should be 6 inches at the widest point here. Remember we said that fish skin has some thickness to it. So let's see how close I am to 6 inches. This is scary. What if I make him way small? Okay, I'm at 6 1/4 inches height, and that's about what I have here. So I could stand to go down just a little bit with my rasper, with my sanding sponge. So this is a pretty close fit. I don't want to take him down too much because you don't want a big gap in the back of your fish like you made him too big because your fins won't lay on center. But as bad as that, you don't want skin that you don't know what to do with either. You want to make him exactly what he was. So if this is a go, next week we'll probably show you how to do the throat on him so that customers can look down the throat. We'll probably show you some gill techniques, and we'll put a rod in him and he'll be ready to mount. So thanks for joining us. Oh, we got to give away our Deem fish skinning knife. Do they get this one, this used one that's all kind of covered in gold?
Not quite, but same one.
All right, you get a brand new one.
Yes.
Same product, brand new. And who
So,
wins it?
The winner goes to Stephen Collins.
Steve Collins. And how did he win it?
He won by sharing and liking last week's live video.
So all they got to do is share and like this week's video,
Yes.
and their name goes in what? How many times? Once?
Well, everybody's name goes in once.
Okay.
And then we pick a lucky winner.
So if they share, like and share, right now, they're in for the next week's drawing.
Correct. Yes.
That's all they got to do.
That's all they got to do.
It's real easy.
Very easy.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining us. Good luck, Brett, down in Texas. He's going to come back wearing a cowboy hat and a big belt buckle. I went down and judged Western Regionals in New Mexico. Was that where it was? I don't know. I got a belt buckle like the biggest belt buckle. It's huge. Huge.
We do have a really quick question from Frank Fulmer, and he's wondering, will you make a mold to reproduce those mannequins?
These, if you wanted to reproduce these mannequins, it's a ton of work, but you're going to get something very symmetrical that fits very, very perfect. If I say I want to keep using that over and over and over, I want a mold of that, I would spray it with a heavy automotive primer, a catalyst primer like a fiberglass, sand it down perfect. As a matter of fact, we're doing it right now with bird bodies and bears and bobcat legs today. Sand it really, really smooth. We'll take spot putty. We'll fix any little divots. Now, you'll say, it doesn't have to be that perfect. It's going inside of a fish. No, but it's got to kind of come out of a mold a few thousand times. That's why you make them as perfect as you can. Then you sand it, you spot putty, you sand it, sand it, sand it. Now, man, that's looking about perfect. You shoot it with primer again, sand it, sand it, sand it. Then we would wax and buff it, 10 coats of wax and buff it. And then we would cut parting lines, and then we would dam it. You can dam it with clay, or you can dam it with tin, or whatever process you want. And then you'd spray a gel coat over it, and then you'd fiberglass. The fiberglass we use takes 10 coats of fiberglass. That gives you one side. You flip it over, 10 coats of another side. And if that's worth it to you, you go for it, because it's a lot of work.
All right.